How many rich families is it?
Well, that one of the people from the Kissinger group, who's a bunch of these kind of elite, nerdy think tank people, was David Rothkopf, and he wrote a book about the managerial class. And he argued that the Western Atlanticist power block is basically run by like 6,000 people. So there's a managerial class of about 6,000, but they submit to, the top 10, 20 wealthiest families.
And that's like the Rothschilds
They would
and
be up
like
there. This is in Dr. K Quigley's books. He was Bill Clinton's mentor, and he wrote kind of from the perspective of the Council on Foreign Relations, the history of the last century. He wrote a book that he published in the 1960s, a 1,300-page book called Tragedy and Hope. And in that book, he explains from the elite's perspective the whole 20th century. And he says the two world wars were done for the purpose of bringing about ultimately global governance. We're not there yet, but that's their goal. And it was these wealthy families and elites that were behind that. So he talks about the Astors, the Cliveden set, the Rothschilds, Cecil Rhodes. All of those were part of this, what they called the roundtable groups that wanted to bring about this socialist world government.
How did the Cold War give them more of a global world government?
Because the excuse for the Cold War, there's a great chapter in the middle of Quigley's book. So he says, here's what really went on in the 20th century. And he's not a conspiracy theorist. He's an establishment dude. So he wrote this giant text. Then he wrote another book called Anglo-American Establishment, which is just the entire Western sort of power bloc's game plan. And it's the old British imperial model, but now it's the Pax Americana, not the British Empire, but it's a lot of the elites out of the UK and in America. And the idea, and that includes Israel as well now. So it's not just, when I say Anglo-American establishment, that's the name of the area. The region in geopolitics has nothing to do with the genetics of the people. It also includes Israel
That
as
was
well.
going to be my next question. Are they one of the really weird? They're like the race mixers. Do the elites believe that? Like they have like better blood or something?
I think some of the elites are very into bloodline philosophy, genetics, yeah, and so they think that there is kind of a superior ideology, and there's a lot of different versions of this.
I don't know if you've seen like the eye color chart. I don't know if you know what I'm talking. I've seen it on Twitter. It's like a new.
I mean, there's something. Obviously, the genetics are real, but
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that like there's magical bloodlines is kind of silly. But in a lot of the writings of the elite, they're obsessed with sort of genetic purity and all of that. So like Hitler, everybody's familiar with Hitler's
Was
view.
he part of the elites? or
Well,
was he-
that was one version, one experiment that was going on. So, like,
Okay.
if you read Bertrand Russell, he talks about all of these being experiments in different countries. So, Bolshevism was an experiment of scientific governance. Hitler's version of it was a type of an experiment. And the British establishment actually goaded and wanted Hitler to go into Poland and do all that. That's all in Quigley's book. Anyway, to make long story short,
But even back then, they were all the families were like working together.
for the most part, yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So on both sides of the war, they were both.
Well, yeah, because Quigley argues that the British had a dual appeasement plan where they were telling the public one thing, and then they were actually funding, even after the invasion of Poland, they were funding Hitler. So Bank of England was giving money to Hitler. They gave Hitler $2 billion of Czech gold. So they were giving the impression, hey, we'll support you if you do this. Then when he did that, they condemned him in a cause World War II, which was intended to happen. The purpose for the two world wars, one and two, was to weaken and destroy the two major competitors to the Western power bloc, the Anglo-American establishment. So that was Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russia. The two world wars depleted and kind of exhausted those, and the Cold War. And so now we're at the point where those powers have been essentially dismantled, and now they're just sort of mopping up, trying to get rid of the last remaining elements of what might exist in Eurasia that's not under the control of the Western elite.
So all these families, they work together. And their whole and they say this in their books.
Absolutely.
Like if you read their books, they admit to this.
Yeah.
And what if are they ever questioned on it? In
No, because
interviews
nobody
and
reads these
stuff?
books.
No,
Well,
no, but I mean, like,
Luke Rudowski did ask, I think he's asked Kissinger, he's asked one of the Rothschilds on video. He's asked some of these people, and they're just like, yeah, whatever. They don't pay any attention. So, I mean, it's a totally psychopathic kind of arrogant attitude. They don't, I mean, the people are bugs, so they don't care.
so are they wrong in a way because they say that they're like smarter than everyone else, and are they wrong? Aren't they in a way?
Well, I mean, I think that if you
I'm not saying it's like right, but
if
I'm
you
saying,
equate it with psychopathy, I don't equate intelligence necessarily with psychopathy. And I think the whole plan that they have is kind of, I mean, again, it's technocratic, it's transhumanist. They think that eventually there will be a world government. Everybody will be submitting to, AI. Will be all the cities, smart cities will be run by AI. But they believe in a mass depopulation. So I think it's a totally weird anti-human agenda. I don't think it's. I mean, there's a lot of intelligent people amongst that class, but they're also kind of psychopathic and
Yeah.
anti. I mean, the sort of the very ethos is against human nature itself. So
And is that okay? Because I've also seen the anti like white stuff. Is that like I don't know what's it called? That blonde chick was talking about it on Twitter.
oh, Ava, yeah, yeah.
I don't know her
So I mean,
name, but
there's
she
all
gave some speech
yeah,
saying that
Ava
the
Blender.
migration was part of that like that plan or
There's a
something.
book written by Kelly Greenhill, who is she writes at an academic level. It's called Weapons of Mass Migration, and I think it's like Stanford or somewhere. So it's like
Okay.
an academic text. I read a lot of those academic texts,
Okay.
and I mean, yeah, mass migration is a that's a classic element of warfare. I mean, people think of warfare as like just tanks and
Yeah.
soldiers. No, warfare is economic. It's ideological. So it's soft power is part of warfare. It's cultural. Culture war is part of it, and then you have existing populations being replaced as part of warfare.